In this video, I'm going to create a Tiefling Sorcerer using the Draconic Bloodline Sorcerous origin, which is provided by the player's handbook. Additionally, I will make use of the new character creation wizard to showcase one of Fantasy Grounds' most anticipated features, and something I hope will add more people to the overall player base. A sorcerer works much like a mage or a wizard when it comes to their spellcasting capability. As a result, a sorcerer not only has a limitation on the number of spell slots that they have, but they also have a limitation on the number of fonts of magic, if you will, that they will be able to use throughout the course of a given day, or between long rests. One of the other differences between other spellcasters is they don't rely on intelligence or wisdom for their spellcasting capability. Instead, they make use of their charisma ability score. So with that, let's go through the process of actually creating our character. The first thing you will want to do is click on this PCs button here that you will always generally see at the right side of your primary Fantasy Grounds window. It will pop open this character selection screen, and unless you've had other characters created, it should be blank. To get access to the character wizard, you want to click on this star icon here, and that will pop up our character wizard. Once the character wizard is open, all you have to do is choose the race that you wish to actually make use of. In this case, I'm going to choose Tiefling. And you'll see that it will update the content of the right side of this screen with some of the various features and capabilities and traits specifically that this particular character has. For example, this particular race provides dark vision, so you can see up to 60 feet in the dark. They're medium sized and have a speed of 30. They know these two languages by default, and they have these traits as a result of their racial legacy. Once I've done that, all I have to do now is hit the next button. And this will allow me to start creating the attributes that I want to actually use for my ability scores, such as strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. There are a couple of ways that you can actually go through and roll these abilities. By default, there's the standard array that makes use of these general values, and you really just shift them around to the position or stat that you want. And you can use these arrows here in order to actually move those numbers around. So if I move this 10, for example, just to charisma, you just click on this button and it will move that to there. I can move it back simply by clicking on this button. And obviously, there really isn't a way to wrap a stat around. So if you had an 18 here, but you really wanted it over by your strength, you'll have to move it all the way over this way. You won't be able to wrap it around. Other options for creating your ability scores is through a dice roll, manual entry, or a point buy system. My personal preference has always been the dice roll, and the minute I click this, it will automatically roll die. And as you can see, it has already gone through and dropped the lowest dice for us, so we don't have to worry about doing any math here. In addition, it's already populated the fields in the order that the die was rolled. Really, the idea here is that you'll shift the number over to where you actually want it to go. Now, while those stats are okay, I'm not overly happy with them. So I'm going to re-roll. And as you can see, it clears out and repopulates the values, and that's actually a very high average in reference to the number of stats that I've got here, or the amount of stats that I've got here. I still want 118 though. Let's see what I can do. Alright, so approximately a dozen rolls later, I was able to finally get an 18. And actually, it's in the stat that I want it to go in. And the reason I've done that is I want to show you what happens with this particular character, specifically through the racial adjustment. As you can see here, this race provides a +1 to the intelligence as well as a +2 to the charisma. And by ensuring that I had an 18 in my charisma, I'm actually going to start with a character that has a charisma value of 20. That is actually pretty good. In addition, the second stat that a sorcerer is going to make use of is their constitution. So in a sense, this race isn't necessarily set up to be a sorcerer when it comes to the bonuses you're going to get from the racial adjustments, but that is really a secondary point. There's no limitation that would require you to use something like that. It really still comes down to what you want to use for the actual race. So I actually want the 16 to be in the Constitution. That'll increase that capability there. That gives me 2 16s. For my intelligence as well as my constitution. Now granted, intelligence and wisdom aren't necessarily required, but quite a few saving throws do come into play there. And I'm actually going to move this 9 over to my strength, and then I'm going to shift Okay, Okay, so I want the 13 to be in the Wisdom. That'll give me a decent armor class bonus, good intelligence, good charisma, and a good constitution and a decent wisdom. So really, I'm not meant to be hitting things anyway. I should be hitting things from a distance. So melee is a minimal stat here. Now, granted, it will be a problem when it comes to saving throws, but we'll see. So now that I have my ability score set, let's move on to choosing our class. And we've already decided that this is going to be a sorcerer. I'm going to choose Arcana and potentially Deception, but I've already got an idea as to what I want for my background, so just let me check one thing here. I want Hermit. What am I getting for the Hermit? Medicine and Religion. Okay, good. So that'll still allow me to gain 4 skills here. And in this case, I'm going to be creating a Draconic Bloodline based sorcerer. The Sorcerer happens to be one of the few classes that allows you to choose your class specialization right from the start. Unlike other classes, such as the Fighter, for example, which requires you to choose your martial archetype at level 3, you literally get to choose it right now. So with that, the next thing to do is either click this next button or the background button to actually go through and select the background. And I've already decided that I'm going to choose the Hermit one. However, some other backgrounds here could potentially be applicable. Maybe a Sage. I could easily see that. Possibly a, thinking maybe a folk hero. I wouldn't see a gladiator being it or a guild merchant. Possibly a pirate. That could potentially work as well. The last thing that I want to do on this particular page is to make sure that I choose an additional language. I have 2 already selected that was provided to me through the racial traits. And because of the background, I get to choose an additional one. Now, the fact that I'm a sorcerer based on the Draconic Bloodline specialization, it makes an awful lot of sense to be able to choose the Draconic language. And as you can see, this minute that I did that, this save button became available. So I can actually go through now and potentially create the character sheet, but I'm not yet ready for that. I want to go through and make sure that I've set up my inventory, as well as go through and make sure I set up my spells. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually choose my spells. This window here shows that I have the ability to choose up to 4 cantrips, as well as 2 spells. And that is accurate in this particular case, so that has actually been fixed. The spellcasting capability for a sorcerer limits how many spells you can actually start off with, and you can always check that by going to your spellcasting selection here and read through and find the spells known of first level and higher, and through that you'll learn that you can only choose 2 spells based on the actual class that you're choosing here. You don't get to make use of your casting ability to indicate how many spells you actually know, unlike a wizard, for example. So I'm going to very quickly drag and drop a couple of cantrips here. I want, where'd that go? Prestidigitation. Kind of like Ray of Frost. Although, now if I drag that back, does that go away? Ooh, I can delete it. Nice, okay. I just had a thought. Because I'm a tiefling, fire or ice might be a bad thing for him to make use of, or him or her. Alright, what else do I want here? Oh, Shocking Grasp. And light. I don't need light. I can see in the dark. Mage Hand. That'll do. Alright, so that's all the cantrips. And as you can see, I can't rightfully choose anymore. In fact, I don't think I can even drag another one down. Oh, I can, apparently. But I don't think it'll let me create one without that. So, which one did I drag down, friends? I don't need that. Alright, level 1. So, I want Burning Hands. And let's see. Let's go with Mage Armor. So, one thing about a sorcerer is that you're generally not restricted on the schools that you can choose, but you are restricted to choose from the list of sorcerer spells. And I don't know if there's a limitation in the sense of some wizard spells don't show up in the sorcerer's list, but it doesn't appear to be that way. It does appear like you can actually get most of the spells, if not all of the spells, made available to you. In relation to the character's inventory and starting equipment, there is the inventory option here, and you can choose the equipment, weapons, and armor that you're going to go through and start with. To help facilitate that, I do recommend you open up both the character sheet, or sorry, the class sheet, and the actual background sheet, because both of these two sheets provide you with starting equipment. So here we go. In relation to the background, you will always find it under the Proficiencies section. And in relation to the class, you will always find it underneath the equipment section. The good news here is that you don't have to do this on your own. They guide you through these options here to actually allow you to choose the appropriate item you want to add to your inventory. So as a sorcerer, I get to choose a light crossbow with 20 bolts or any simple melee weapon. Or sorry, any simple weapon. It's not necessarily restricted to just a melee weapon. In this particular case, I'm actually going to choose to go with a light crossbow because I'm setting this character up primarily to be a ranged damager, in the sense of I want spells to be cast in from a distance as opposed to being up close. So I'm going to go to weapons, and there's a filter option here where I can just type in cross, and it will narrow the scope to anything that has the word cross in it. In this case, I want a light crossbow, and all you have to do is drag and drop, much like you did with the spell options there. And I believe quarrels are under here, so bolts rather. Yeah, crossbow bolts. So you can see that there's already a crossbow bolts 20 option here. And what that will do is it will give you 20 bolts to start off with. You don't have to drag down 20 actual bolts for using that one. All right, so component pouch or arcane focus. So I want an arcane focus. Now, a little bit of a trick here. If you search for focus, you're not going to find what that actually is. To help facilitate the discovery of what that is, you want to go to Adventuring Gear on the equipment page for the Sorcerer Class sheet. Scroll down until you see Arcane Focus, and then this will allow you to choose one of these options. And instead of like dragging and dropping this over onto here, what you need to do is, I want to use a orb for this, and just drag and drop. And that's all you have to do. Dungeoneer's Pack or Explorer's Pack. If you're ever unsure as to what is contained with either of these packs, again, all you have to do is open up the Adventuring Gear table and pop open the information for Dungeoneer's Pack and the Explorer's Pack. And the description will tell you what is actually inside of each pack. So this looks like this is primarily a day trip, whereas this looks like it's primarily someone who travels around. And I would imagine that a sorcerer who is a hermit has primarily been traveling around, not so much doing a lot of dungeon delving. So I'm going to go with the Explorer's Pack. Now you'll note that the items that were in the pack haven't yet sort of expanded out, much like you would have seen in the past when you dropped an Explorer's Pack into the character sheet. That will still happen, but only when the actual character sheet is created. All right, and then 2 daggers. Okay, so daggers are going to be under here. And all you have to do is drag 2 of them down. Or type in 2. Either one will work. Although I don't think the dragging of the second dagger actually works, so you might have to drag it down and then just change the number. Okay, and that touches everything that I need to add to my character from the equipment, or from the class sheet here. So let's go with this. A scroll case stuffed with notes from your studies or prayers. So that will be under gear. And I'm going to drag that down, and I'm going to change this. that should create an item in my inventory with that particular name. Winter blanket. I'm not sure if that's... Yep, okay. Blanket. I'm going to add an additional comment to that. Winter. A set of common clothes. And a herbalism kit. Aha! Healer's kit. So, under tools, there is a herbalism kit. So why is that not showing up here? Interesting. So can I drag and drop? Yes. So you can drag and drop from here. So if you ever find an item that isn't showing up here, but is accessible from one of these 4 tables, you should be able to drag and drop it into the inventory without any issue. And this last bit, 5 gold pieces, is something I'm going to do once the character sheet itself is created. And the reason for that is that this is the total cost. This isn't what you're going to get when you create the character. So this is actually how much all of this is supposed to cost, although that seems a little bit high to me, but anyway. Now the last thing that I have to do is choose a name. So in this case, I'm going to go with the Draconic Bloodline Sorcerer. And I've gone through and done everything that I have to in order to actually create this particular character. If I, however, was creating a character with a higher level, I would actually need to go through and modify that here. So you can actually set a higher level here. And anything higher than 4 might trigger a couple of updates on the feats page, but I'm not entirely certain whether this is actually done and ready to go. As you can see, it didn't really update here. But I'm not overly worried about that. So with that in mind, I'm going to go through and I'm going to save this particular character. And what will happen is that my character sheet will be created. So the first thing I want to do is go through and modify the inventory here. So that's PP, GP, CP, oh, EP, SP, and CP. And I want 5. Okay, so that takes care of the last thing that I had to deal with in relation to the actual inventory of items. And let's see here that I am a maximum of 135 pound carrying capacity, and I currently have 80 pounds on me. And that's because the backpack added all of the items that were stuffed in it to the list, including itself. One thing I like to do, though, right off the get-go, is organize this. So technically this backpack isn't going to be empty anymore. Bedroll, that's going to be in the backpack. The blanket is also going to be in the backpack. That is going to be in the backpack. I'm wearing those. Those are worn, and that is equipped. Yeah, let's just go with carried. Yeah, okay. Bolts is going to be in a quiver, which I have to add. Dagger is going to be on the belt. That'll be in the backpack. Backpack. That'll be equipped pretty much. So that'll be equipped. That's already equipped. Okay, good. Rations will be in the backpack. And as you can see, there's an indent that has occurred here. And that is to tell you that it has been organized into another location that already exists. So in theory, all of these items should essentially be buried underneath this group here. When I drop that backpack, all the items that are in it go with it. So you don't have to worry about individually selecting each item and getting rid of it. For example, if you're trying to drop your backpack to swim through an underground cavern or cave or something like that, and it's just too tight for you to fit through with it on your back. That just helps for organization. The next thing I'm going to do is choose a portrait. I'm going to go into here. Addition, and tieflings are down here. That would be a rogue. Sorcerer. That'll do. Oops. I keep forgetting you don't have to drag and drop it. You just select it. When it comes to the token, however, the Dungeon Master is going to have to assign that to you. And the reason for that is that tokens don't appear to be shared across from the Dungeon Master server to the client connection until the token is actually attached to your character. One of the other things that the character wizard doesn't automatically set up for you is your saving throw proficiencies here. You can see that none of them are actually starred up. To find out what that is, you simply go to your class sheet. Under proficiencies, you will see saving throws, and you're looking for Constitution and Charisma in this case. And all you have to do is make sure that the star is actually highlighted. And that should fix that for you. In relation to a sorcerer, the character wizard doesn't always properly link your spell slots or your pact magic, fonts of magic number and uses into the character sheet. In this case, we can see that our actual amount of spells that we can make use of and whatnot is empty at this particular point in time. To fix that, we need to go to preparation. Once you enable that, you'll see that we have a spell slot option that drops into place here. For our level, we need 2 spell slots, and we want to go to this particular chart here, our class sheet, to be able to get the number of sorcery points that we're going to be able to make use of. Now, as we start, we don't get any. And what that will now do is it will show that we now have 2 first level spell slots that we can make use of. The next thing we will want to do is to make sure that any ability here that needs to be linked into our Actions tab is there so that we can actually make use of the features that it provides. So I'm going to quickly go through and open up and review these, and then identify which ones need to be linked into the Actions tab, and then showcase those. So there are a few things here that we'll want to go through and review. The first thing I want to go through and cover is Discovery. This is primarily a role-playing feature, if you will. It is something that you need to coordinate with the Dungeon Master in reference to the hermitage that you have had in the past. So it's can be something like a quest that the Dungeon Master can provide. It could be something else that has already been decided. It's part of your past. It really comes down to what you and the Dungeon Master have actually agreed to do. So that is something that you'll want to review, and then review with the Dungeon Master after you've come up with a couple of ideas. So this isn't something that gets linked to our Actions tab in any way, shape, or form, but I wanted to showcase it because it is something that you should make use of to add some flair to your character, if you will. In relation to Hellish resistance, it gives you a resistance to fire damage, and it is something that you'll want to make use of on your Actions page because it's going to give you an effect. And what we want to do is drag and drop that into place, and it will initially drop into a powers section here. Because this is specific to the Tiefling race, I'm going to create a grouping here called Tiefling, but I can never remember how to spell it, so Tiefling. Now what will happen is that this will appear under a grouping called Tiefling, or category as I believe it's now called. But it doesn't do anything yet. You want to go through, add an action, and then add an effect. And you do that by right-clicking on this particular row here, if you will. It will pop up this radial menu, and you want to select this arrow icon. And then there are a number of options here, but the one we're looking for is an effect. Once you have that added to this particular skill, you can tell, or feature, you can tell that it's linked because if you minimize it through this magnifying glass, it goes away. Click on the magnifying glass that is below that. You want to go through and add in the following. It's called Hellish Resistance, provided I could spell it right. Yeah, there we go. And then you want to put a semicolon here between the title, which is what we've given it, that's the first part of this, or the description in this case, and then the condition. In this case, it's going to be resist, fire. And fire should be in lowercase. It is going to be on self, and it doesn't expire. It's permanent. It's always there. And that's it. How this is going to get used is when your character is added to the combat tracker. So I'm going to quickly add this character to the combat tracker on the Dungeon Master side, and then open up the combat tracker here, and I can get rid of the Totem Warrior. We don't need that. Now, right now, we have no effects. We have nothing here that is indicating that there is an effect. To make use of it, you just simply want to click on the effect button here, and it will apply Hellish Resistance, Resist Fire to your character. Now, anytime you remain in this combat tracker, that will always be there. If for some reason the Dungeon Master has cleared out the combat tracker and you get re-added to it, you want to make sure that you immediately add that back. It's an effect that's permanent. It's one that will benefit you, and if you unintentionally forget to add that during a combat and you happen to take fire damage, I'm not going to necessarily roll that back. I'm going to say, well, it's your fault for forgetting, or I'm going to roleplay that out and say, well, this particular spell was so powerful that it just blew past any resistance that you had. That kind of thing. So that takes care of that particular feature. Draconic Resilience gives you one thing you won't need to adjust and a second thing that you will. By default, you're going to gain a single hit point for each level that you gain, and it should automatically apply. I have a hit die of 6, but I have a hit point total of 10. I only have a Constitution bonus of +3. That tells me right off the get-go that I had to have rolled a 6. Well, actually, just a little secret here. At first level, you always start with the maximum amount of hit dice you can possibly have. So it guarantees that you had a 6 off the start. You have a +3 for your Constitution bonus, bringing you up to 9. So where is that extra 1 hit point coming from? Well, that's coming from your Draconic Resilience. As you gain another level, that will add an additional hit point as you go. So it's not that you're gaining 2 hit points when you hit level 2, for example. It's that you're gaining an additional hit point on top of the hit die that you're going to gain and your Constitution bonus. So if you rolled a 1 for your hit points for level 2, for example, you're going to gain 4. So you'll have a 1 plus your hit die roll. A +3 bonus there gives you 4. And then you'll gain an additional 1 point, giving you a total of 5. If you rolled a 6 here, you will gain another total of 10 hit points. That's how that works. Normally, a sorcerer who is not of the Draconic Resilience category here, or not doing the Draconic Bloodline, wouldn't necessarily gain that extra hit point. There might be another feature for the other specialization, but for now, that's what we see. You will notice, however, that the AC also has to come up one, or a couple of points here, because it's saying AC is equal to 13 plus your dexterity modifier when you're not wearing any armor. Well, we're not wearing any armor, and I can show that here. There isn't any armor in this list, but our AC is only showing as 12. Well, that's wrong. The problem is that you can't modify the base value of the AC. So what you have to do is cheat the system a little bit by granting an increase in your armor here. So technically your AC equals 13 minus 10 equals 3. So if you put a 3 here, you'll see that it will bring that value up. Another way to do it would be to add the 3 over here, and you'll see that it will bring that up. This, however, can be modified by other systems, whereas this gets modified when you add armor to your character. So if I were to drag, let's load up some armor here. Armor. Let's go to inventory, and let's say something that's going to... So base AC is 11 here. What we should see is this value should change. If I drop that into place, you'll see that it gets overwritten by a 1, because it simply subtracts 10 from this and showcases the difference. However, if I unequip that armor, it does not go back to the value that it was. At the same time, adding it over here could also be a risk, because there could be temporary magical benefits that you gain that would also go through and adjust this modifier. So it doesn't really matter which of these two fields you go through and add it to. You really should double check when you add and remove armor, or when you add and remove a spell effect, and make sure that it didn't totally zero it out on you. As a sorcerer, though, chances are you're not going to be wearing armor. So the safer of the two options, and let's just get rid of the armor there, is to simply modify this and leave this value unaffected. This one won't change as frequently as this one will when you're a sorcerer and have spells that modify your AC. So that takes care of Draconic Resilience. Infernal Legacy allows you to cast some additional spells. So this is something we're going to want to make sure to take note of because we'll be returning to it at later points in time. Once again at 3rd level, and again at 5th level. What this is giving us the ability to do is actually cast another Thaumaturgy cantrip here. So we really need to open up the spells and look for Thaum, or Thaw in this case, and drag and drop Thaumaturgy to the character sheet. And it should drop into this area here, which it has. Great. At 3rd level, we'll want to make sure that we check this again because we're going to need to go through and add in Hellish Rebuke. And then again at 5th level, we'll want to make sure that we go back and add the Darkness spell. Now, these are traits that are being gained through your Tiefling capacity. So while it does make sense to leave this particular spell under the cantrip section so that you know where it is, you could legitimately change this group so that it falls under this area here, and that way you know that all of your Tiefling skills are there. So the last thing that you need to do before this character is complete for level 1 is to make sure that you study this Dragon Ancestor feature. The reason being is you have to choose this at 1st level, and it will affect things later on. Specifically, the type of damage that you'll be able to take advantage of here. Finally, we actually kind of screwed up a little bit in the sense of when we selected the languages. The reason being is that through the Dragon Ancestor capability here, you're already gaining the ability to talk in the Draconic language. So this would be a case where I would allow a particular player to actually go back and adjust the languages, which is under here. I have no idea why I couldn't find that, but anyway. So that Draconic would be added as the Draconic or Dragon Ancestors feature, and then you can choose another one that you could actually legitimately speak. I'm not going to do that for this video, but it would be something that I would allow if this happened. In addition, whenever you make a charisma check when interacting with dragons, your proficiency bonus is doubled if it applies to the check. Unfortunately, however, in relation to Dragon Ancestor, there really isn't a way to actually create an effect or an ability here. So what you'll really want to do here is just simply drag it into place so that you can make use of it in reference to indication to the DM that you're going to be doubling your proficiency bonus because you're doing a check with the dragon. And with that, we are done setting up all of our features, all of our skills, and all of our abilities. So now what we need to do is prepare to do level 2. Before we do that, we need to know what's going to happen at level 2. So the first thing we're going to do is gain an additional spell, and it's still going to be classified as a 1st level spell. We are not going to see an increase in the total number of cantrips that we can make use of, but we are going to be gaining our Font of Magic capability with 2 points. Additionally, we will not be seeing any additional proficiency bonus applied until a little bit later. So I'm going to drag the character sheet over on top of this particular part of the screen here and drop it into place, and that will now apply level 2. We can also see that we added 7 hit points, so we must have rolled really low in relation to that. Probably a 3 plus 3 plus, yeah, so 7 points. Ooh, no, we would have rolled a 2 because we have an additional hit point. And as you can see, it is applying it here. We now have to worry about our Fonts of Magic. So we should see an increase in our total spell slots. The way that I found that works reasonably well is to simply drag and drop this into place. And then make sure that you tag the number of uses. So you can increase the number of uses that'll work here. And this is actually from the Sorcerer, so Sorcerer. now what'll happen is during a combat situation, when you make use of a particular point, in this case, there's a chart here that tells you how many points will actually be used. So to buff up or modify a first level spell, for example, will cost you 2 points. Well, what you do is you click, and now you're done. When you actually go through and have a rest, so if I execute a long rest on the Dungeon Master side, for a short rest, it's not going to return. But for a long rest, it will. That's the easiest way that I found that kind of makes it work. It's not the greatest, but it does work. And that is everything we really have to do except for choosing our third first level spell. So I'm going to pop open the spellcasting link here, which will take me to a table that I can get at for my spells, and set that aside. Okay, so first level, right? Yes, so I can minimize cantrips. I already have Burning Hands and Mage Armor. And both those have, yeah, okay. I'm going to go with Chromatic Orb. And there, that'll be my spell selection. So I'm actually going to set that there because we're going to need it pretty much every level. And that is done. That is level 2 complete. So at level 3, we're going to be able to make use of Metamagic. Our sorcery point count is going to increase by 1 point. We are not going to gain any other cantrips or proficiency bonuses, but we will gain an additional spell. So we'll now have a total of 4 first level spell slots and 2 second level spell slots. We will still only know 4 spells. So let's go ahead and apply level 3 to our character. Drop that into place. I'm going to choose a second level spell. And that will be Scorching Ray. Excellent. It will cost us 3 points in order to cast, or modify rather, a second level spell. I'm also going to increase the amount of points I have. So let's go here to 3. So I now have 3 uses. And then finally, we want to take a look at our Metamagic ability here. So Metamagic, open that up and just set that aside. So Metamagic has a large number of potential ways that you can twist a spell to change what it's going to do. You can carefully cast it. You can make it a distant spell, empower the spell, extend the spell, heighten the spell, quicken the spell, make it a subtle spell, or twin the spell. And each of these has a different capability. The thing is that when you are twisting a given spell, let's say Magic Missile, you can only make use of one of these Metamagic capabilities. And depending on what you will do with it, will adjust the number of sorcery points that you're going to have to spend because of that. I do believe that the bulk of them require a single point, but some of them do require pretty much a significant number of points here. So this one requires 3, for example. And it looks like the rest require 1 or a dynamic number, in the sense that maybe you're twinning it X number of times. You might have to spend 1 point per twin, if you will. So this will be an actionable adjustment you're making to a given spell. So I'm going to drag that into place. But you'll also notice it gives you no additional bonuses here. So this is for the Sorcerer, so Draconic. Actually, no, this is a base Sorcerer capability. Yeah, so I'm going to put this into the Sorcerer section. There. So let's go through each of these particular adjustments that you can make to a given spell. In relation to a careful spell, what this will allow you to do is give you a means to cast an area of effect spell where you might have some of your colleagues in close combat with let's say a large creature that's highly powerful and you're casting a fireball, for example. Most of you know that anyone within the range of that fireball is going to suffer damage. Unless they make a saving throw, they're still going to take half damage. Well, with a careful spell, you can actually selectively choose an X number of your players, which is 1 point, and you can choose the number of creatures up to your charisma modifier. So in this case, you can choose up to 5 party members or creatures or a combination thereof for a total of 5, and give them the ability to automatically succeed on the saving throw, which means they will automatically take half damage as opposed to the full blast. And you can see that essentially here in the wording. It essentially states, when you cast a spell that forces other creatures to make a saving throw, you can protect some of those creatures from the spell's full force, meaning that they can still take some of the damage. A chosen creature automatically succeeds on its saving throw against that given spell. That doesn't necessarily mean that you nullify the damage entirely. It means they simply automatically save against a fireball, for example. They automatically make their dexterity save. That means they're only suffering half damage, not the full effect of the fireball spell. In relation to distance spell, you have the ability to adjust the range of a few spells. So, for instance, when you cast a spell that has a range of 5 feet or greater, you can spend sorcery points to double the range of the spell. So if you've got a fireball spell that you can lob at 30 feet, for example, I believe it's 60, but we'll use 30 for the example, that means you can then throw it 60 feet if you decide to use a sorcery point. If it happens to already be 60 feet, you're now throwing it 120 feet. In relation to a spell that is touch-based, so a perfect example of that would be Chilling Touch or Shocking Grasp, you can now convert that into a ranged spell by using a sorcery point so that that individual can be up to 30 feet away from you, and they'll still suffer the effect. So you could legitimately cast Chilling Touch on someone who's 25 feet to 30 feet away from you. So an empowered spell is one of the few metamagic capabilities that you can actually use in conjunction with another metamagic option. What it allows you to do is re-roll the damage die. So let's say you lobbed a fireball at somebody and you rolled 5 ones. Well, in this character's case, they have a charisma modifier of 5, of +5. That means that I could re-roll all 5 of those ones and potentially get additional damage added to it. However, if I roll 5 more ones, I still have to take those values. But if I happen to roll 5 sixes, I've now added 26 additional points of damage to my output. So that gives you an indication as to what you can do with that. In addition, you can use Empowered Spell if you have already used a different metamagic option during the casting of the spell. It just means that you're now using 2 sorcery points, not just 1. An extended spell gives you the ability to double the duration of a given spell. So let's say you have a spell that lasts for a single minute. You can double it so that it's 2 minutes. If it lasts for 12 hours, you can double it to 24 hours. But nothing can go past 24 hours. And again, that takes a sorcery point to do so. Fairly simple description and explanation. A heightened spell allows you to put a disadvantage effect on a particular target. So if you're making a particular creature make a saving throw on dexterity, you could actually spend 3 sorcery points and have them roll with disadvantage on their first saving throw. Kind of convenient if you want to almost guarantee that something is going to fail. It's not always going to be a guarantee, but it's going to be pretty close to it. In relation to a quickened spell, you can spend 2 sorcery points to convert a particular spell that would normally use 1 action into a bonus action. Can be a bit tricky, but it does give you that ability, so it is something that you will rightfully be able to do. A perfect example of that is a fireball. That takes 1 action to cast. You could convert that into a bonus action. Oh my. Yeah. Ow. That's going to hurt. Subtle spell, if you're underwater, this will help you because generally, if you're trying to cast a spell that's helping you for any particular reason and you're underwater, you're not going to be able to speak or potentially even make the motions with your hands to be able to cast that spell. So semantic and verbal capabilities can be completely removed from a given spell when you use a sorcery point, giving the ability to potentially cast a breathe air spell if it happens to require a verbal or semantic requirement. All you do is you execute your sorcery point utilization and then cast your spell. So it still should allow you to succeed. Even may give you the ability to cast a fireball underwater, although I don't know what good that will actually do. Probably not much. But anyway, it gives you a couple of examples. In relation to Twinned Spell, it gives you the ability to take a spell that is generally set up to target only one particular creature and is not a self-based target, so it can't target you, and set it up to attack two creatures. So you're essentially doubling its capability. Chromatic Orb, for example, that will attack one particular target. Well, you could twin it and throw two Chromatic Orbs at two different creatures. I don't believe it requires you to actually choose a second creature, but the description here leads me to believe that's the implication. So what you would do is you would use a number of sorcery points equal to the spell's level. So for cantrips in level 1, that would be 1 point. Level 2 would be 2 points, so on and so forth. You then are able to target a second creature who happens to be in range and have one spell go to one creature and one version of that spell go to another creature. There is, however, a limitation on that in the sense that you cannot take an area of effect spell or a spell that is already set up to be able to target multiple creatures and twin it. It has to be a spell that can only attack or hit one creature or person at a time. Before we move on from Metamagic, you'll notice here that you actually need to choose two of the following Metamagic options right now. So you need to, up front, decide which of these Metamagic types you're going to make use of. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to choose Careful Spell and Distant Spell. So here's what I'm going to do. Let's go Metamagic. Yeah, it's there. So to make sure that there's a difference, I'm going to create a Metamagic link, if you will. So whenever I click this, it will include that I'm casting the Careful Spell component. That way, if the Dungeon Master ever asks you to actually go through and click it into the chat system, you can do so. And then I'm going to redrag this into place, add it to Sorcerer, and make sure that I have Distant Spell. Okay. And that is all you have to do for Metamagic. At level 3, we still need to make sure that we actually go through and add Hellish Rebuke as our spell. So let's go through here and drag, open up spells rather, look for Hellish, and drop that into place. That should just drop right into, where did that go? Level 1? Yeah, level 1 spell here. Okay, there it is. So that's just dropped right into our capability there, or our spell casting window. That's it. And that completes level 3. So at level 4, we're going to acquire a couple of things. We're going to have an increase in our sorcery point total. We're going to have an increase in our total number of cantrips that we know. We have an ability score improvement coming through, and gaining an additional level. So at level 4, we are gaining the ability to cast an additional 3rd level spell, but we are able to gain an additional spell for what we know. So I'm going to drop level 4 into place. There we go. I've already selected Scorching Ray. Yep, okay. So, web's always a good one. Take that. Our total number of Fonts of Magic that we can use is now 4, so we have to increase that. I wish there was a way that we could make it so that it would tie to the level, but apparently we can't. Anyway. And number of cantrips. So we need to go back to the cantrips side here. Expand that out. Expand out our cantrips listing here. I already have Firebolt. I'm going to go with Mending. And then finally, we have our ability score improvement. So with the ability score improvement, there's a couple of options that we have available to us. One is that you can take one ability score and increase it by 2 points. The second option is to take 2 ability scores and increase them by 2 points. The third option is only going to be available to you if the Dungeon Master will allow you to, and that is to make use of feats. And in this case, there are a large number of feats that are available in 5th edition, just out of the box. There are probably a couple more that come in from some of the supplementals, but this is what is available right from the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Player's Handbook. The problem is that some of those feats can be considered overpowered, and as a result, a lot of Dungeon Masters don't allow you to take them, so you're limited to just the ability score improvements. I'll go through and show an example of it, and the first one I'm going to do is modify this Constitution value by 2 points, and I'm doing that intentionally. So that should be 18. The reason why is that this is going to increase our overall Constitution modifier by +1 point. I am now missing hit points, and the reason I am missing hit points is that because of this bonus increase, I can now multiply that +1 times 4 because I'm at level 4, and add 4 additional hit points to bring this up to 38. And this can happen at any level. So if you don't choose to modify your Constitution bonus or ability score right off the get-go at level 4, you can say do it at level 19, then depending on the total bonus improvement here, you will be able to multiply that bonus times the level that you've chosen to make that modification at, and add those hit points to your total hit point count. That's how that works. So at level 5, there's only a couple of things that are going to happen here. We are only going to see an increase in our total sorcery points. We are gaining a proficiency bonus increase, and we will be able to add an additional level. And I'm pretty certain at this point we're going to be gaining a level 3 spell. Yes, so we're gaining the ability to now cast level 3 spells. So with that in mind, let's drop this into place. Okay. Go down to our ability scores here. Minimize a couple of these to be able to... So let me just... There we go. And I'm going to choose a level 3 spell. So I'm going to minimize that, and I will give everyone half a second to determine which spell I'm going to drop into place. Right. Finally, we need to modify our Fonts of Magic preparation utilization, which should actually be 5 at this point. Not sure why that cleared out, but anyway. At level 5, we now have the ability to add in our darkness spell. So let's open up the spells window here. Look for darkness. Open that up and drop it into place. And as we can see, that has dropped that into place for us. And that is all we have to deal with when it comes to Infernal Legacy. So we've now taken care of all of our Tiefling traits when it comes to adding new spells. And that's it. That is level 5. In relation to level 6, we're going to see an increase in our sorcery points. We're going to get our next Sorcerous Origin feature. No increase in our cantrips, but we will get an increase in our total number of spells. So we're literally going to gain a spell every level. Just so I don't have to keep repeating that. So the first thing I'm going to do is drop the level into place. Drop that there. I'm going to scroll down and pop open this to bring up our specialty list there. Increase our font of magic use. So that'll be under Sorcerer. Now that should be 6. And finally add our spell before we get to our feature. So we're still doing 3rd level spells. Okay, so just minimize that for now. I'm going to take haste. Okay, so that takes care of our spells. So the next Draconic feature we picked up should be Elemental Affinity, which it doesn't appear to have added it to our thing here. No. So there still appears to be an issue there. So I've just dragged and dropped it into place. It should actually apply all the items specific to it. So let's see what this does. Okay. So what this actually does is gives you the ability to add some additional damage to spells that you're going to cast that are of the same affinity as your Draconic Ancestor. So if you remember this table, we had to choose one of these. And I didn't make note of it, but I decided to go with gold, in this case fire. So I'm just going to comment that. And just so that you don't forget, it's always good to update your feature list with the ancestry type that you have selected. Now what that does mean is that anytime I cast a fire spell, I can benefit from this particular update or upgrade, if you will, in the amount of damage that I can do to a spell. And what this gives us the ability to do, I'm just going to drag this into here, and this is part of our Draconic Bloodline set of features, so I'm going to tie it into there. We can now add our charisma modifier to the damage roll of an actual spell. So if I were to roll 8d6 of damage here, I would be able to add +5 to the total damage. And the reason for that is because it's your modifier to 1 damage roll. It doesn't mean that you're adding 8d6 times 8 times 5. It means you're adding 5 points of damage to the overall roll of the damage. And any rerolls that you have to do, you don't get to add any damage to. So, an easy way to do that is as follows. All right, where did I put that? There it is. I'm going to create a new effect. I'm going to modify this, call it Elemental Affinity. Actually, I don't need to do that, no. It's not an effect. My apologies. I'm going to delete that. It's damage. So I'm going to add damage. I'm going to modify that and add it. And I want to make sure it is charisma. And it'll be fire damage. Now if you look here, you'll see that it is already figured out that I have a +5 bonus to fire. It's because of the stat that I have applied here. Now all you have to do is roll the damage that you're going to do and then click on this. So in the combat situation, let's see, I have this black dragon targeted. Let's say I hit it, and I get rid of that. That was a test I was doing. Let's say I hit it. Now I'm going to do damage. So let's expand this out, and let's roll the damage on that particular target. So I've done 21 points of damage. Now all I have to do is click this to add the 5 points of damage that I've done. That's it. That's as complicated as it is. And that actually completes level 6 for what we have to do. So level 7, we're going to see an increase in our font of magic points here. And we are going to gain our first 4th level spell. So I'm going to go to the main page here, drag and drop this into place. Go down to actions, modify the font of magic skill here. So just set that to preparation, increase that to 7. And then minimize level 3. So to ensure I can get this into the right location, I'm going to select Wall of Fire. And as you can see, it's now dropped it into place. Nothing else. Yeah, no, we're not getting anything else. Okay, that is it. At level 8, we are going to gain our next ability score improvement, additional Font of Magic point, and an additional spell. So let's drop this into place. Let's hop over to the Actions section and deal with our Font of Magic first. That's now 8 uses. I'm going to choose another 4th level spell here. I'm going to go with Greater Invisibility. And that should have dropped it into place. Yep, it has. Good. And now for our ability score improvement. So let's have a look here. I'm going to bring our dexterity up by 2 points. The reason I'm doing that is that will now increase the armor class of our character. And that's it for level 8. In relation to level 9, we are gaining a new proficiency bonus point here. We are increasing our Font of Magic. We are not gaining anything there, but we are gaining our first 5th level spell. So I'm just going to minimize this and do that and drop this into place. So we are now level 9. Going to jump over to here, modify our Font of Magic to 9, minimize that, and choose my spell. Kind of tricky. Let's go with Wall of Stone. And that is it for level 9. In relation to level 10, we are going to gain another Metamagic capability here, an increase in our Font of Magic, our next increase in our cantrips, and it should be the last one. Yep, it is. In addition to our spell. So, I'm going to start with dragging the level into place, heading over, increasing our Font of Magic. Okay, and then pop this open. I'm also going to look for another cantrip. So minimize, let's expand that out. Minimize this to give me some space. Cantrips, what do I have right now? Message could be useful. Okay, there we go. Our spell for level 10, we have a 5th level spell capability here. Oh, let's see. Drop that down. Nah. We'll do Teleportation Circle. That could be useful to get around. Okay, now we need to make a decision on our next Metamagic type. If you recall, we've already chosen Careful Spell and Distance Spell, so the only ones that we can select from at this point are Empowered Spell, Extended Spell, Heightened Spell, Quickened Spell, Subtle Spell, and Twinned Spell. In this case, I'm going to take Twinned Spell. That seems highly useful, so I'm going to drag and drop this into place. Not sure why that plus is there. And just update this to be twinned. And part of the reason why I dragged it directly from here, because this is already set up in the Sorcerer group, so I don't have to worry about it creating another group up here and then having to manually move it down. And I believe that completes everything for level 10. So we've got our Font of Magic dealt with, we've got our cantrip dealt with, our spell is dealt with, and our Metamagic is dealt with. Okay, we're done. For level 11, we're going to simply be acquiring our next Font of Magic, as well as our first level 6 spell. So I'm going to prepare Font of Magic at 11. Drop that down. That's not what I wanted, so scroll that down. There, give me some space. And 6th level spell. I believe Sunbeam does radiant damage. Yeah, radiant damage. That's still a nice spell, though. Yeah, we'll go Sunbeam. Okay. And that is everything for level 11. At level 12, we will be acquiring our next Font of Magic point, as well as ability score improvements. We do not gain another spell that we've known. And in fact, we don't even gain any additional spell slots. That's a change from a lot of higher level characters such as the Wizard or the Mage, where you continue to gain spells as you go. So there is a bit of a limitation here. So I'm going to drag this into place. Oh, apparently I didn't do 11 or 12. There we go. My apologies. Totally forgot to do that. And I'm just simply going to modify our Font of Magic then. That should be 12. And that is it. That completes level 12. At level 13, we are once again acquiring another Font of Magic. We are seeing our next proficiency bonus increase. And we are seeing our first level 7 spell. So let's minimize that. Let's apply the level this time. Increase our daily use of Font of Magic to 13. And then set this up so that I can drag and drop a spell here. Delayed Blast Fireball. I didn't even have to think on that one. I love that spell. Absolutely love that spell. Okay. And that is everything for level 13. At level 14, we will be acquiring another Font of Magic use. Our next Sorcerous origin feature, which I suspect is going to be Dragon Wings. Yep. And we are not acquiring any additional spells. So let's take a look at dropping that into place. Updating our Sorcerer's Font of Magic to 14. And then let's take a look at this. So with this particular feature, you will be gaining the ability to actually sprout wings. And that didn't apply there, so I'm going to drop it into place. It's not really technically magic, or an actionable item, I should say. And you will be gaining no additional speed bonuses because of it. So you will be able to move around as if you were normally walking on the ground, but this time you can actually sprout wings and fly, if you will. You can create them as a bonus action, and you can dismiss them as a bonus action, but there is a catch. You cannot be wearing armor unless that armor has been made to accommodate them, and same with clothing. Clothing will be destroyed when you attempt to manifest them if the clothing itself is not made to actually provide a means of those wings being able to exit the interior part of your clothing. So that will have to be taken into account. Hopefully by the time you hit level 14, though, you have been able to acquire some custom clothing to be able to take this into account. I would, however, still recommend that you link this to your actionable list here, just simply because of the fact that it is a Draconic Bloodline feature, and the Dungeon Master might want to click link to it. And this gives you a very quick way of doing that. And that's it for level 14. At level 15, we will be seeing our next Font of Magic point increase, as well as our first level 8 spell. So let me just scroll this down a little bit here, and we can see that here. That means we will be gaining a new spell this time. So I will minimize that, get rid of that, drop this into place, go to the Actions tab, increase our Font of Magic here to 15. In case you haven't guessed, this is going to be equal to your level. And then minimize these to enable an easy way to drop something into there. So I'm going to go with Sunburst. There we go. And that actually completes level 15. At level 16, we are going to see another point increase in our font magic usage, our next ability score improvement, and our second last. But we will not be getting any additional spell slots or spells. So I'm going to drop this into place here. Increase our font of magic capability here. Okay. And then I'm going to look at our ability scores here. So, if you have a dungeon master that allows you to actually apply a feature, or feat as they're called, then you can go to this button here and it will pop open this window. All you have to do is look through this list of features that are available and actually choose one that makes sense for your character. Something that might work, for example, for a sorcerer, maybe Spell Sniper. But you'll notice it has the prerequisite to be able to actually cast a spell, so you wouldn't be able to use this as a rogue, for example, unless that rogue happened to be the arcane trickster type. Another one might be Warcaster. But there really isn't too many here. Resilient might be a good one to choose as well. But really it comes down to what you want to be able to do. A lot of people choose Lucky or Alert, and in fact I'm going to take Alert for this particular character. I'm going to drop that into place here, and that's where it goes up here. Now what happens is this. The Alert skill is going to modify your initiative bonus. And as you can see here, it's now adding a +5 to your initiative bonus on top of your dexterity. At the same time, you are no longer able to be surprised when you are conscious. And in addition to that, other creatures no longer gain advantage on attack rolls against you as a result of being unseen. So if they're invisible, they no longer gain an advantage to their attack roll because of that invisibility, for example. And that actually completes level 16. At level 17, we are going to gain our next Metamagic selection, an increase in our font utilization, and we are finally gaining access to level 9 spells. So I will go ahead and drop this into place. So this is level 17. I'm going to go to Abilities and pop open Metamagic. Going to go to here, choose to update our font of magic, and then choose a level 9. I'm going to choose Meteor Swarm. Who doesn't love throwing a crap ton of meteors at somebody? There we go. Now, I've already used Careful, Distant, and Twinned, or selected rather, not used. I'm thinking I'm going to go with Quickened spell for the next one. So let's pop this open, drop that down into there, and just update this to Quickened. There. So now I have selected my last Metamagic selection. And that completes level 17. Level 18, we'll see our last origin feature apply. Our next point of font magic increasing, going up here, and we do not gain any additional spells. So let's go to the main page, drop this into place, and take a look at Draconic Presence, or pop that open anyway. Go back to our Actions tab, and update our font of magic usage. Okay, and let's take a look at our feature here. So with Draconic Presence, you can essentially exude awe or fear out to about a distance of 60 feet. And any creature who is within that sphere of influence needs to make a wisdom saving throw or be frightened or awed, or charmed in this case for awed. However, if they make their saving throw, they are immune to that ability for up to 24 hours. This is an actionable item, so you're going to want to make sure that it is linked into your actions page here. And as you can see, it is already setting things up, with the exception of one thing. So I'm going to set this as Draconic Bloodline. Just copy and paste, makes it easy. It can either be charmed or frightened. So I want to make sure that I have both capabilities there so I don't have to go digging for the frightened effect. I'm going to add an action, or an effect rather, and I'm going to just simply say frightened. Could use caps, but it really doesn't much matter. And as long as they're within that sphere of influence, they will always be frightened or always be charmed. Whenever they make their saving throw, that's when they will break that charm, or that's when they will break that fear. And that's literally it. So this way, I don't have to worry about going looking for frightened and applying that effect. I can literally just pop it into place on, so if I deselect you, select you, pop that, and now they're frightened. Apparently I still have that there. So they're now frightened, or if I chose to, charmed. But I do believe a succubus is actually immune to those features. So that'll be the other case, is that a creature that is immune to this shouldn't really be able to be charmed or frightened. That's something you'll want to take into account. And that actually completes level 18, as well as the application of our last Draconic Bloodline Specialization feature that we're going to acquire. At level 19, we are going to gain our final ability score improvement, our second to last Font of Magic increase, and we are not going to gain any further spells going forward. So we have now essentially maxed out the spells that we are going to have. So all we have to focus on for level 19 and 20 is our Font of Magic increase and any changes that occur here. So I'm going to drop this into place. Go to our Actions tab. Update our Font of Magic to equal 19. And then go back here. Curious. This is a tough choice. I think I am going to actually increase the Constitution. No, I'm going to increase the Dexterity again. Bring that up. I don't gain any additional. Actually, I did gain a bonus, so I'm now over a 17, and my initiative capabilities improve some as well. So that means I should be going quite early in the order when it comes to the initiative rolls. And that completes everything we need to do for level 19. So at level 20, we are going to acquire our final Font of Magic increase, as well as our last feature. So, I'm going to drop this into place first. Modify our Font of Magic one last time to 20. That is actually pretty ridiculous how many points you now have. And then take a look at our Sorcerous Restoration feature. So, in relation to Sorcerous Restoration, you now can regain 4 expended sorcery points whenever you finish a short rest. The issue here is that there really isn't an easy way to set that up unless you create blocks of 4 fonts of magic. And what I mean by that is that we could theoretically do this. It's a bit of a roundabout way to do this. Just dragging, I'm just gonna, pop this open. I'm just gonna drop this into place so that I now have that, and I'm gonna go back to preparation. I'm gonna set this to 4 uses and set that to rest. Now to equal 20, I need 5 of these. And now that I've got that set, I should just simply be able to drag and drop 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now what will happen is as follows. Let's say you've burned through this bunch here. So you can see that it's no longer available. We now only have 4 groups of fonts of magic. Boom, boom, boom. And the more you use it, the more it's going to go away. But there is a problem. There's a small glitch with this particular problem. If I execute a short rest right now on this particular character, I'm going to get them all back. And that's not the way that should work. So this really only comes into play is if you're using them in lots of 4 and then taking a short rest. And they'll come back. Otherwise, you're going to have to remember that not all of these fonts have come back. And there really isn't an easy way to do that. The other way to do it would be to manually, so let me delete these. Set this back to 20. And then under usage, let's say that you've used this many. Now, you haven't yet gone through and taken a short rest. So if you go back and do that now, here's the problem. I've set that as a short rest. So let me fix that. Daily. So now if I go through and use these and do a short rest, I'm not going to get any back. What you will have to do is uncheck 4 of those each time you take a short rest. And that's the best way to do it. The other option can have a few issues with it. This way, it's you have to simply remember to go and actually make those changes. So I've already got that in place, and that is literally it. That completes all of the levels associated with the Sorcerer, specifically the Draconic Bloodline specialization. I wish to thank you for taking the time to watch this particular video. I hope you found it informative and useful to familiarizing yourself with Fantasy Grounds in general, and that you had fun in the process. If you found the video useful and you liked the content of the particular video, go ahead and click that like button to let me know. And if you have any questions specific to the topic covered by this particular video, or just have some comments in general, please feel free to post something in the comment section, and I will do my best to respond to any questions that are asked. Additionally, I do release content quite regularly, and it's generally specific to Fantasy Grounds or 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons at this time. So if you'd like to be notified when new videos come out, go ahead and subscribe and click the notification bell to ensure that notification is sent to you when I release a new video.